senior producer Josh Long, and I just pulled our video associate Tara Kelly into one of our edit bays. And well, I do kind of have a weird question for you, Tara.
Okay. What is it?
Do you believe in any cryptids?
I don't even know what a cryptid is. What's a cryptid?
So a cryptid would be an animal that some might argue isn't real. Maybe there's not, quote, scientific evidence for it. You know, Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot. There's lots, but also Mothman. Do you think any of them could be real?
My gut reaction is no. I don't think so. But I don't know. Now you're getting me to think about it.
Well, you live in Chicago.
I do.
And Mothman has a history in Chicago. And not to scare you, but in 2017, there were 55 sightings of Mothman in Chicago.
In 2017?
Yeah.
That recently?
Yeah. I'm going on vacation next week, and I was wondering if while I'm out, you could do a little bit of research on Mothman. And when I get back on Monday morning, you could maybe run us through some of the facts that you find.
I would love to do that.
Season 2, Episode 6. Is it real?
First of all, I just want to say I'm Josh Long, senior producer, Grotto Network. We have Tara, video associate. We're going to be talking about Mothman and some other cryptids. And we also have a new video producer, Kevin DeCloedt, in the studio with us. He's helping record. We asked him like 5 minutes ago if he would help us record, and he said yes.
I'm here.
Say hello, Kevin.
Hello, Kevin.
Thank you. This has been one of my personal hardest projects to ever approach at Grotto, because this topic of the supernatural, it's such a big topic. It's hard to narrow down like what my favorite part of all that is. So what I think we landed on, Tara, were some cryptids that kind of live in our areas, right? So Mothman is from a lot of Rust Belt states, but I know you live in Chicago and it has a big presence there. Yeah.
Yeah, according to my stats. Yeah.
Mothman-reference.com.
Yes, exactly.
So also just north of where we're recording right now in South Bend, there's a town called Dowagiac, Michigan, and they have the Dewey Lake Monster. Have you ever heard of this, Tara?
I have not heard of this.
So the Dewey Lake Monster is also known as the Sister Lakes Sasquatch. It's kind of the same as Bigfoot, but I think it's more like leathery, scaly skin. Think of like maybe a reptile version of Bigfoot. It was seen in the 70s. I think a cop even testified that he had seen something. And then even closer to South Bend, near Elkhart, Indiana, there's the Cable Line Monster. You're shaking your head.
I've not heard of this one either, but I'm intrigued.
Supposedly there was like a wreck or a farming incident along this road, and ever since then there's been an entity that has, caused passerbyers to get flat tires. And then once they have a flat tire, it kind of like scratches their car or shakes their car. They see it walk by in their rearview mirror.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah, it's pretty tough stuff. Going back to why this is the hardest podcast ever, like I have never seen any of those aforementioned cryptids or monsters, so to speak. Like with my eyes, I haven't, but all you can do is like read accounts and other people talking about how they've seen it. Did you have anything that you ran across when you were reading that was like, this seems like a trusted source, or this seems like totally not trusted source?
There were a couple things. A couple people had given like what they had witnessed one thing, so if you Google Mothman, all these like terrifying images come up. It's like huge, dark creature. But then somebody said, a biologist said that they thought it was actually like a sandhill crane was what they were mistaking it to be. But then when I Googled a sandhill crane, it was not scary at all. It looked like, if you look at the difference, I'll show you this. Okay, so there, all the images of Mothman.
Yeah, just that one maybe one of the ones on the top right, just describe that, what the Mothman looks like.
A huge black winged figure with red eyes. It's like gigantic. It's like in like smoke, so it looks extra scary. But then when you Google the sandhill crane,
It's a cute little guy.
yeah, it's just a bird. It's like a skinny bird.
So again,
Two.
Google image search, one of those top right images of the sandhill crane. How would you describe that to the listener?
It's just a nice looking bird. It does have red near its eyes, which is why I think they thought it was the sandhill crane.
It's a clue.
But to me, there's like no comparison between the two of them. So I thought that was kind of funny, actually.
Yeah, I think Tara not believing in Mothman is really more just a defense mechanism, because we know that she just moved into her own place. Like, I think she's doing all this Mothman research. It might just be a little bit of a scary thing.
to confront that might be a possibility.
Yeah.
Kevin.
I think she's just like not allowing herself to really believe in it right now.
Well, maybe my opinion will change by the end of the podcast. I don't know.
Maybe it will be. I had vacation last week, as you guys know, and it was a great opportunity for me to be like, I'm not going to focus on the podcast. I'm not going to think about this subject at all when I go down to Alabama. Just going to get out of it and come back afresh when I get back to South Bend. But before we even got to our condo in Gulf Shores, Alabama, we stopped in Foley, Alabama, and we went to a candy shop for the kids. We're going to go to a candy shop for the kids, then to a tea shop for me, because you know I love tea, Tara.
Yes, you do.
We shared some with the team earlier this week, but you weren't here.
Sorry.
So we went to the candy shop, and the kids were looking at the candy. I have 3 daughters. They're going through the aisles, trying to get them to not touch stuff. And all of a sudden, I come across this row of stickers, and like a third of the stickers are Bigfoot, Foley, Alabama, or I Want to Believe, Foley, Alabama. And I was like, this phenomena is following me down south. But we moved on to the train museum between the tea shop and the candy store. The kids were like running around looking at all the trains, and I was telling my wife Teresa about all the stickers I had seen. So she was like, well, let's just Google it.
The Red-Eyed Devil, Yeti, it has plenty of names, but is it real? If you stop in Evergreen, that is the town we just went through before we came here, the answer is yes. So the city council voted unanimously to make Evergreen the official Bigfoot capital of Alabama. More people are coming together and telling stories and comparing notes that are identical to mine, said a pastor. We've seen the eyes of this animal. They realize that some people may think they've lost their minds. When I heard people talk about it, I didn't believe it, Pew said, but when they look at it and see its eyes, you will believe it. If I had one wish, it would be that I wish you could see what my eyes saw. That is a great wish.
Oh, wow.
So as you can tell, listening to that audio, Tara, some people do think Bigfoot is real. And as he said at the end of that interview, if he could only wish for one thing in the whole world, Tara, it would be that your eyes could see what his eyes saw.
Anything to weigh in, Kevin? How do you feel about that?
Well, let me finish this story of Foley, Alabama, because we did go to the tea shop.
Okay.
And I asked this really nice lady. She ended up hooking me up with like 2 types of fruit tea. Kevin, you tried one of them earlier this week.
It was delicious.
Thank you. Is the elder melon?
Yes.
Yeah. She also gave me a blueberry green, which is delicious. I haven't shared any of that with you because
Keeping that to yourself, huh?
I don't have much left. So She was a super nice lady. Her name was Robin, actually. And she was talking to me and like just being so nice about tea. Felt like maybe I could build up the courage to ask another person about Bigfoot and Foley.
You know, that was a really cool place to go with families too. Now it's just a traffic jam.
Quick question for you before I go.
Sure.
Is there are there Bigfoot myths in this town?
No, I've heard, but no. There's the cat man.
Cat?
The cat man down in Orange Beach, in fact. There's cat man.
Legend of the cat man?
There is. Look it up.
You should ask your son about
Man bear pig.
Oh no, cat bear pig.
Cat bear pig. That one I haven't heard. That sounds like it's an exaggeration. Cat bear pig.
I still hear about cat bear pig. And that was when he was. That was when we were in middle school.
Is that my son?
Yes.
Don't believe anything from middle school. That is so cute.
Ain't it?
Yes, it's adorable. Take a picture of that.
What did you say, Catman?
Catman. So look up that because that's down in Orange Beach, and they have a beautiful. If you're in Orange Beach, you're close to the Gulf Shores Park, the park there. Take the kids and we'll walk the trails. It's amazing. You may see some alligators. You'll definitely see some hawks and some of the nesting birds.
And maybe Catman.
And maybe Catman because Catman.
So much to see.
There's all.
The Catman?
That's my first thought too. Is this half man, half cat? What is this?
Sounds like Batman. Sounds like a superhero.
Batman.
No, I'm not saying Batman. Catman. This was all before he checked into our condo. So I tried to put this whole thing to rest, like I'm really going to have a vacation here. So I was able to forget about all that scary cryptid stuff for a couple of days. Just went to the beach, and one day our family decided to go visit Gulf State Park. As we started walking and we were getting to the first markers, we got a map, and here are some of the trail names. There's Rosemary Dunes Trail, where we were later told that the Florida rosemary, it's a really cool plant, is known to grow. Then there's Rattlesnake Ridge Trail, where that poisonous aforementioned snake is very common in southern Alabama, so it's named after something that lives there. And then right between those two roads is Catman Road. It was actually pretty funny because like the first person that greeted us didn't know like anything about Catman, and I had to point out to her that hey, like you are saying this rosemary. She was like giving a tour saying like, oh, this is Rosemary Trail. They have the rosemary bush, and this is rattlesnake. The rattlesnakes are in this part. And I was like, so why don't you think Catman is somewhere on this trail? Like, what makes you think all these are named accurately after things that live here, except this road? So I got to thinking more about Catman, but that guide was also super nice. And she later took me into someone that was like in the offices there at the Gulf State Park, and she like pulled out this dusty book and told me that there was a tribe indigenous to that area way back in the day, and they would brew this plant that had really high caffeine levels. So think like Red Bull or Monster or something. And all the like young warrior guys would have this competition to see who could chug the most Red Bull before they would like puke or like have to stop for one reason or another. And whoever could drink the most was like considered the warrior of choice for the year. According to legend, one of the winners of this monster chugging contest went feral afterwards and joined a bobcat family. So it's kind of like a Tarzan, like a reverse Tarzan sort of story.
See, when you were talking about Catman, I was wondering, is Catman the size of a man? Or is he the size of a cat? Like, is it a cat that looks like a man?
So unfortunately, while this story is true, there's very little supernatural about it. It's just a man who decided to go like live in the woods, basically.
Were there like pictures of Catman? Or did you just have to like leave that to your imagination?
It would just be a picture of a man.
He's making little cat ears with his
Yeah.
fingers.
So just
Oh
like it
my
was satisfying for me to talk to someone knowledgeable about the actual subject at hand, Grotto senior editor Josh Noem talked to Father Aaron Michka recently about UFOs. Josh Noem found Father Aaron just a few floors up from where we are here at the University of Notre Dame. We're on the first floor of a building, and he's on like the third or fourth anthropology floor. Yeah, he's an anthropologist and a priest, and they're going to talk about UFOs, like I said, and also mysterious light beings that once visited him as a child. So pretty crazy out there stuff. Don't worry, when we come back from this interview, we'll be back here with me, Kevin, and Tara in the studio, and we got way more about Mothman to come.
Father Aaron, thanks for sharing time with us today. Really excited to dig into
You're
some of these
welcome.
things.
My pleasure.
Can you just maybe just start by telling what your position here is at the university, your area of study, what you spend your time with right now?
Absolutely. So I'm joining the faculty this coming school year in the Department of Anthropology. I just finished my doctorate from the University of Michigan, and my research is on Christians in Egypt. And I'm really interested in how different kinds of Christians interact, how they make space together. So how do they build churches, houses, and even transform the natural landscape of Egypt, which has a lot of historical significance, especially for Christians.
Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm. So you wrote this piece about UFOs for us, which is great. I'm so excited to share it. Mm-hmm. But you begin this piece by talking about an experience, or maybe a repeated experiences you had growing up.
Yes.
Where you would wake up and see a floating light in your room. Can you just kind of like expound on that a little bit more?
Well, I just want to let the audience know that I am of sound mind.
We have tinfoil hats down here.
Unfortunately, I no longer experience these strange things, but really for about 2 or 3 years, I would say at least once a week, I would wake up and just see sort of a hovering light, and it tended to be very peaceful. It wasn't something that scared me. Sometimes maybe a little bit, but I never really shared it with anyone because I just thought it was bizarre. Maybe that this is what everyone sort of experiences. And I have family members who sleepwalk, so maybe it's something in the genes that we. And I think it might be even more common than most people realize. But yes, for about 2 years, I would experience it.
So when you look back, I'm wading into anthropology here,
Sure.
which is like an area that I know nothing about. But
yeah.
When you think back on that experience, how do you make sense of it? Like, what does it mean to you right now?
Well, so I'm an anthropologist of religion, and one of the early theories that famous anthropologist developed was that in the human person there are two selves. Like there's this sort of thing that comes out at night. You have dreams or visions, and this would be sort of a universal experience, and so primitive people needed some sort of explanation for why there are sort of two personalities that reside in the human person. So this nocturnal soul, in a way, animism. So that's that has sort of its appearance early on in the history of the discipline. Now I think we'd probably look to psychologists for some sort of explanation. Though the people I study in Egypt really pay attention to their dreams. They would have dreams about me when I would show up and they're like, oh yeah, I saw you in my dream last night.
Oh, wow.
I knew you'd be coming.
Oh, wow.
They would have dreams about holy people, and in fact, Coptic Christians will have very formatted images of saints so that they can recognize them when they appear in visions or in dreams.
Oh, wow.
So the sort of the connection between that dream space, dream world, and everyday life is pretty important.
One of those ways in which maybe the veil between what's visible and what's invisible in our world is maybe kind of torn down, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And of course, I mean, dreams play a big role in the Bible too. But that's super interesting to think about. Do you, looking back on that experience, you're talking about it in terms of like how you're approaching it professionally as a sociologist.
Yes.
As a person of faith.
Yes.
Do you look back and feel comforted by that? Do you feel like it was some kind of a divine manifestation, or like, what does it mean to you?
Well, for a long time, it didn't mean anything. I just bracketed it as sort of the uncanny, something beyond explanation. Now looking back, this is 20 years in the past now. I do see it as a moment in my life when I was making pretty important decisions. That's right around that time when I started to think about becoming a priest. So I do think that perhaps it was sort of God knocking at the door. Mm-hmm. In a way,
yeah.
Sort of helping me appreciate that there's a lot about this world that I didn't understand, and I still don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In some ways, too, an experience like that, whether it's explained by psychology or an actual physical phenomenon or whatever, is almost irrelevant because of what it actually means for you, or how it might shape your experience in the day-to-day, right? You're feeling through that experience, you're feeling God's closeness. So
that's right. Right. And I think the feeling's important, right? I mean, it's sort of spiritual gurus, saints, and all traditions would really want to know what was the state of your heart when you were experiencing that. And this author that I cite, Jacques Vallée, notes that in a lot of these, close encounters of the first kind, with these strange beings, that a common theme is that people are at peace.
Yeah. Wow.
Except for animals. Animals tend to not be at peace.
Oh, interesting.
So dogs or livestock, they tend to sort of panic, but that's not shared by humans.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They can sense that something is maybe off or out of the norm.
That's right.
And they don't have the categories perhaps to make the leap to think about what it could be.
And who knows that maybe they intuit that, so a common request is for livestock or an animal to be taken in the vessel. So
yeah.
Perhaps they know more than we do.
Wow, yeah. Okay, well so around UFOs, it's fascinating to me that a couple years ago, we have footage from Navy pilots encountering what they call unexplained aerial phenomena.
Yes.
And it's footage from the fighter jet.
Yes.
And they're talking about it. Like, they're obviously confused with the way it's moving. This gets released out into the world. Everybody's kind of like, for a day, is like, that's really weird. Yeah. And then we just continue going on living like nothing happened.
I know.
What is going on?
Well, it is incredible. And I'm surprised also because people still find it hard to accept, despite the evidence. And, I hang out with quote unquote religious people who kind of pretty quickly accept a lot of other stuff that might be hard to believe. Mm-hmm. A man died and rose from the dead, for example. So that we have pretty, it's not sort of 100% convincing, but pretty strong evidence that there's something strange out there that we really can't explain. I am surprised that it's not sort of keeping more people up at night.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even for myself, this as we've been leading up to this month, I'm kind of like, how deep do I want to go into this? Because it's unsettling. Like it really raises a lot of fundamental questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh. And just it's interesting to think back to the different ways in which this phenomenon might have appeared to us throughout history. Yes. So I've heard you talk about this, but maybe you can expand on this a little bit more about, in recent times, UFOs have appeared to us and we've kind of understood them according to the cultural paradigms that we've got.
Yes.
Like, we understand a technological world right now. Yes. So a lot of what we see is in that form. Mm-hmm. Maybe that goes deeper?
Yes. So, and here, again, I'm indebted to the work of Jacques Vallée and a few others that have done what actually anthropologists tend to do, which is comparative analysis. We look at something that seems a little strange, and then we try to find other things that are perhaps similar, and then just do a comparison. So what Valet has done in his work is look at encounters, for instance, with the good people, fairies, and the UK and Brittany, for instance, and northwestern France. And in that comparison, there are some pretty striking similarities that these encounters tend to happen sort of at the periphery in a way, in forests or pastures, sort of beyond urban centers. Tends to involve livestock and sort of this exchange of goods. And there's like this healthy fear that people have toward this, but sort of an understanding that it happens. And so before, in sort of pre-industrial Brittany, for instance, it seems like there was a very rich tradition of people understanding that these are spots in the landscape where fairies reside, and you just walk carefully past them.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that kind of analysis. I think it really opens up a bit more of what might be going on.
Yeah.
And I don't have the answer, unfortunately,
Right.
not yet, at least.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of the whole point of what we're doing this month is like, in some ways, the questions are almost more fun to ponder. Do you have other examples from just history from the other areas of the world where these kind of, that veil is a little thin?
Yes. Well, one good one would be, and again, it's not a sort of tight comparison, but Egyptian Christians believe that saints can transcend the bounds of space and time. So there is a modern saint that died only a few years ago, who is believed to have been able to travel throughout the world. She was the Mother Superior of a convent in Cairo, but had encounters with people in Brazil and Germany, and even sort of drew a few of them to come visit her convent in Egypt. So, and this is it's widely held. The suwah is referred to in Arabic, the travelers. So, not exactly UFOs, perhaps, though. You could ask, are these strange creatures angels? Are they?
Yeah.
I mean, what sort of order do they belong?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, not even, I mean, there's stories of Padre Pio bilocating, right? So,
yes.
Yeah, it's hard for, like I said, we don't have the categories to understand it properly. But there's obviously something more going on there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, the further you sort of dig into the online community of which I am just a casual observer, right? I want the order to know. I just observe, don't contribute, at least not yet. But, you do see sort of theories about perhaps these visitors are an advanced form of humans.
Yeah.
That we in my introduction to anthropology class, we talk about human evolution. We've been evolving, and we will continue to evolve. And perhaps what we're seeing are our offspring, many generations down the road, who, as one theory might have it, are coming to warn us about the dangers of nuclear warfare, for instance. To stop us from dropping the bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mind goes to, as long as we're on the topic of harebrained theories,
yes,
my mind goes to maybe different dimensions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And thinking, for someone who's in 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions would be incomprehensible. But for us in 3, the 4th would be something we just don't have capacity to understand.
We don't have a capacity to understand it. And again, this sort of raises the question of the animal kingdom. I mean, is there, what do some of our animal brothers and sisters sort of observe that we can't appreciate?
Yeah, right.
And that sort of brings me back to sort of, again, in many of these accounts, it's you have the dogs that are running around, and also, they perceive something that's off that we don't grasp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, UFOs, I mean, a lot of times these conversations go to the universe that's so much bigger than we can
Yes.
comprehend, right? And what it means, and almost if you just look at the math, right, it's almost hard to understand that there couldn't be something else out there, just given the laws of probability. So however these things are manifesting for us, I guess the real question is like, what does it mean? What conclusions do we draw from that? What does it mean about how we understand ourselves?
Yeah. Well, I think the first lesson is just a bit of intellectual humility. You know, there's an argument that you could make that science fiction has actually kind of poisoned the water in this conversation because it sort of only presents one option as to what these events are, that they are, small green men, right, from another planet, right? Whereas, the spectrum is quite broad as to what could explain this. I mean, I don't think we even understand how broad it could be, which I think, again, is an invitation for a bit of humility. And to sort of appreciate the evidence for what it is, which is not it's not a conclusion. It doesn't answer the questions, but it invites the questions that can be asked, and that's, I guess, my hope is that both within my church that we sort of square up a bit more to what this could mean, but also, as a society, I think this is a mystery that can bring humans together. Right?
Yeah.
In an area of a time of so much division.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last question I've got for you is just as a person of faith, how you think about this. Really, what we're talking about is the nature of belief, right? And the kind of reigning paradigm right now is empiricism. That really the only thing that you should really trust or believe in are things that we can quantify and measure and test and prove. And faith, this is something that you've given your life for, is something beyond that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can just maybe talk about what this area, in terms of extra phenomenal beings, what that might tell us about or teach us about faith. And is it foolish to believe things beyond what we can, and what dispositions we should bring to the world of faith and belief?
Right. So I'm going to say something that may not seem like an answer to your question, but I'll bring it back. I think one of the greatest dangers in sort of religious belief is to see in God just a reflection of yourself. And in fact, that's a common critique of religion, is that what you're just worshiping is just some sort of version of yourself or your society or things you want to be true. So, I mean, that critique has value in that people have made that mistake throughout history. God, and I believe God exists, is going to be strange. When God presents himself, it's going to be strange. And I think that these sort of experiences of the uncanny are a healthy reminder of how strange God is.
Yeah.
And even sort of in God trying to communicate himself through the person of Jesus. All right, Jesus was a pretty strange dude too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's as relatable as God is going to get, and still we're like, what did you mean by that? But this is God trying to communicate to humanity, all generation after generation, not necessarily just to you.
Yeah.
So of course you're gonna see humanity in all its weirdness, sort of embodied in one person. So I think it's a reminder of, we know God speaks to us when it's like, what was that? It sort of jars us and calls us to see the world in a new way. Yeah,
that's great. This has been great, enlivening conversation. I think I would like to get maybe a couple beers and talk for another couple hours at some point.
Anytime.
It felt really good. We appreciate your time and for sharing your words with us at Grotto. It's been really fun to explore these questions.
A pleasure.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay, we're back here in the studio as promised, and I want to take an opportunity for me and Kevin to just pick Tara's brain a little bit. Can you give us a sense for where this supposed creature has been seen? Like Chicago, yeah, but where else?
So it started in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, in 1966, where two couples, they were on a double date, and they were driving, and they said that a large gray creature whose eyes glowed red when the car's headlights picked it up was following them, and that it had 10-foot wings. And then following this, I think there were about 100 sightings within the next year. But that's where Mothman was born, allegedly.
We mentioned 55 sightings in 2017, and you just mentioned like the number 100. Just the sheer number, do you have any theories on how so many people could be mistaken about something that like you don't believe in? Like what are they seeing? Is there mass hysteria involved here?
Yeah, they just said they were seeing a large creature. I think that once one person reports it, Josh, I think that once like one person reports something crazy, that it's just in the minds of everyone else, and that anything that they see, they would also, if it looked bizarre, even if it were like faintly not familiar to them, they could think it was Mothman. That's my bet.
So one person sees like a garbage can blow across the road, Mothman.
Exactly.
Another person sees a cat, Mothman. Another person sees this red heron.
Catman.
No,
yes,
Mothman. They see Catman, they think that's Mothman too.
Exactly.
First of all, if Mothman was in West Virginia and then Mothman's in Chicago, is that the same Mothman?
Well, yeah, when I was looking it up, I think they were trying to differentiate the two different Mothmen. So I'm not sure. There may be multiple Mothmen.
Yeah. It's like, did he get on the Amtrak?
Yeah, you must have.
But I will say, you mentioned specifically that Mothman had wings.
Yes.
So presumably he could fly between a few Midwestern states, right?
That's true.
Like, he's not seen in California and then like New York the next day.
True, but this was a big span of time. So it was like in West Virginia, it was from 1966 to 1967, and then it came back, or a different version of it came back in 2017 in Chicago. So like, what was it doing in between that time, or where was it?
Is there any evidence that it can like phase in and out of reality? I think I've also heard that there's some sort of like foreshadowing omen aspect to it.
So there was the collapse of the Silver Bridge in 1967, and some people think that Mothman appearing, this was a bridge that connected Point Pleasant to, I think, somewhere in Ohio, and people thought that Mothman was warning them that the Silver Bridge was going to collapse. Or they just said when they saw him, they felt doom, like something bad was about to happen. What else would you feel?
What
happy?
else?
You wouldn't feel happy to see a
No.
10-foot moth. So I spent like 3 days researching only Mothman. So everything was Mothman. I was getting Mothman suggestions on YouTube, which is also terrifying. But yeah, the other day I was going for a run. I didn't run during the day, so it was like 8 p.m. and it was dark out, but I had to get it in. So as I'm like running, every single thing in the distance to me was like, is that Mothman? Is that I didn't know. It was because all I did was research it for 3 days. So it was definitely in my head. But that's how these people are. If someone sees Mothman. So I also fell into the trap, is what I'm saying.
How clearly would you have to see Mothman to report it to anyone? Like, how sure would you have to be?
Very sure. I would not go.
So you think these people?
I don't know. They could also just be crazy. I don't know.
Well, maybe, like, is there anything in the reports of where that says maybe he's like from another dimension? And maybe that's why it took so long for him to go from West Virginia to Chicago. It's like someone opened up the portal in Chicago in 2017, and now he's broke through
But I think that's one thing that's way cooler about Mothman than Catman. Like, Mothman is this creature that's clearly not a man that just went out into the woods to start living with moths, right? This is like the basic premise of it is like unbelievable. Even if there were more sightings or even more pictures, I don't know if it'd be very hard to believe that something like that existed.
Within our universe, yes.
Yes, Kevin, within our universe. And that's kind of how I was feeling, like, these are all just myths, and I've shared this before, but one thing about my own personal, like, faith journey that's always bothered me is, like, you have to a certain extent, believe in something supernatural to have faith. And so I feel like I'm always looking for clues in stories like these of something supernatural that does, like, really could exist. If you see a ghost, isn't that kind of proof that, like, an afterlife exists? So I kind of came away from that Catman trail at Gulf Shore Park a little bit disappointed. And I was telling my family there on vacation, like, it's a lot of extended family, a lot of cousins, a lot of brother and sister-in-laws and nieces and nephews. And I was telling everyone around the adults table about this topic of this podcast. And I was just like, yeah, and I personally have not seen anything supernatural like myself. Like, I don't have any stories myself. And right away, I don't know why, my mother-in-law was like, well, one time I took this medicine after a surgery and I went out of my body and I was floating around in the room and could look down and see myself sitting in the chair below me. I was like, wow, okay. And then my sister-in-law, Jen, pipes in, and when she was in high school near Muncie, Indiana, they would go driving out in the country, you know, as kids do. And they came across this cemetery, and one of the tombstones was like glowing for like no reason. Pretty freaky stuff. So I was like, okay, that's 2 family members. And then, not to be topped, Uncle Tom, you know, just a classic, Uncle Tom, pipes in. And he said when he was in college mowing lawns, there was a cemetery on his route. And he was going there, mowing. It was the middle of the day. It wasn't cloudy or foggy or anything. And he looks to the side, and out of one of the graves, he sees a table-sized blob, misty thing rising up out of the ground. It rose out to about head height and started going towards him and stopped and turned and went to like the side instead and went into this patch of bushes and disappeared. And he was like, I finished mowing that day, but I never mowed around those bushes again like the rest of the summer. And like all of these people, they really believe those things happened. And they're in my family. They have no reason to lie to me. And I don't know, maybe sometimes kind of have to believe some of that stuff.
I have a story from when I was a kid, and my dad and my sister, we went to a Civil War battlefield, and there was a house that remained standing, and I guess the lady who lived there was acted as a nurse, and her grave is out in front of the house. So we're like, you look at the grave, you read the little plaque. We turned and we looked at the house. We looked at the hills and the stuff where the battle took place and everything. And then we went back, turned back around and looked at the grave. And one of us said, were those flowers there a minute ago? And we all completely agreed. There was hundreds of flowers surrounding this grave that we swear were not there when we turned around. So we quickly left the battlefield. So, I mean, yeah, who knows? The flowers didn't get up and leave, though.
They didn't try to hide from you.
No, they didn't back into the bushes like Homer Simpson.
That is how I picture the ghost kind of getting away.
That's what I was picturing too.
This episode was hosted by Tara Kelly, Josh Long, and Kevin DeCloedt. It was produced and edited by Josh Long. Grotto Network is Director Javi Zubizarreta, Senior Editor Josh Noem, Senior Producer Josh Long, Assignment Desk and Event Program Manager Liz Colleran, Web Content Analyst Michaela Douglas, Art Director Becky Rogers, Associate Producer Ben Cruz, Social Media Manager Adrian Garalde, Video Associate Tara Kelly, and Media Intern Nick Guiney. Special thanks to the Copper Kettle Tea Bar in Foley, Alabama.
And this is what one person said. This creature is 8 to 10 feet tall. It has a head as big as a cow's head. His body is brownish black looking, but he looks nothing like the pictures of Bigfoot. His shoulders are as wide as a Volkswagen car. At times it sounds like a dozer walking by, a bulldozer. And other times it's as loud as a cricket.
Is that supposed to be loud or not?
Not loud.
Okay.
There are a lot of eyewitness reports of people watching it walk or run across the road. It's really big, really tall. You can't wrap your mind around how big it is, Ellie.
Why did the Bigfoot cross the road?
Why?